Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me today. I've got a question from a subscriber about when to use big baits versus small baits, and specifically, do I choose a size of lure based on seasons? Meaning, is there a time of year I prefer a small bait versus a big bait, or vice versa? And, I think it's a really good question, and it's one that I've thought about in the past, and I gotta tell you, I don't really vary my bait size by seasons. The only season that I fish where I do feel like a small bait works better than a big bait is during the winter months. I feel like the fish are more lethargic during the winter months, and because of that, they're not as aggressive and they're not willing to chase those giant baits, and it's just easier to get bit on the smaller you go, the more bites I get. Now I can't say I've done a lot of swim bait fishing or large bait fishing in the winter time to really come up with a super good conclusion on that. That's just my personal preference, that I get more bites on small baits in the winter and I fish a lot slower in the winter. So, that's the only season where I do feel like it makes a difference. When I look at the spring, the summer, and the fall, I think there are really good times when both a small bait and a big bait come into play. And most of the time I'll have one of each, or several of each tied on. So I don't know that, I think it's more spot specific and more, specific to the conditions that you're fishing in during those seasons. And I can't sit here and say that, in the spring you should go small, or, in the summer you should go big. I think there are very good times to do both during those seasons. I will say that, there are some conditions when I choose to throw a large bait or a small bait. Two that come to mind very readily. And the first being, if I'm fishing bedding fish, I will almost always go smaller if I can't get bit on the baits that I'm using, versus going bigger. In my experience, and I know I've read some stuff in the past and seen guys say that if you're fishing bedding fish, that you can put on these giant tube baits and throw a big bait in there and that pisses the fish off. In my experience, I give very, very little attention from spawning fish if I throw a very large lure in the bed. They just seem to be a lot more comfortable with it, versus me throwing some micro baits in the bed. Those fish, it seems like they can't stand having some little creature in their nest, and they're much more willing to bite that bait. So I'm sure people are going to disagree with me based on things that I've read and seen over the years, where guys are like, throw this giant tube in there and you'll get them to bite. In my experience, that's not been the case at all. So during the spawn, if I'm fishing bedding fish, I will always go smaller from whatever baits I start with. I won't always start small, but I'll tend to go smaller if I'm not getting those fish to bite. The other scenario is if I'm fishing really pressured fish, I think you're better off going either direction. Either go really small or really big. Those fish are much more accustomed to seeing baits of all shapes and sizes, but the majority of the baits are all going to be kind of that regular size for whatever the type of bait that you're throwing. They're not used to seeing, big swim baits, and they're not used to seeing tiny little, this is like a 2-inch craw. So in that instance, if I'm fishing a really pressured lake and not having much luck, I for sure will go to one of the two extremes. I think that's your best bet. But other than that, guys, I think it's all about confidence. Choose the baits that you feel most comfortable throwing. the majority of the time, it's not going to matter if it's a big bait or a small bait. Just choose the baits that work the best for you, that you have the most confidence in, and your success rate will probably be just fine. You know, in those couple other scenarios where I've had experiences where I think you should either go big or small, you know, it's worth trying, but the majority of the time, I don't think it's going to make a big difference. So thanks for the question. I appreciate it. I hope that was a helpful answer. Guys, if you have other questions that you want me to discuss, please leave them in the comment section. If you have not subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. And if you enjoyed the video, like and share it. Thanks for watching, guys.